So the countdown to Y2K happened. So you saw in the movie The Matrix, you could see that's kind of like the feeling. I want you to really get into the idea that all this was happening because people had this anxiety of these technological overwhelming scenarios. And so The Matrix kind of shows that, and the idea that technology became so overwhelming that we ended up living inside of a simulation, which in a couple lectures from now you will see that Elon Musk believes this today. So this is taken from a Bostrom philosophy, but in many ways The Matrix fictionalizes that in a very Hollywood style. And all the way up to the point where they get into the lobby scene, it really is a good philosophical movie. After that, it's a very Hollywood movie, as it has to be. The Truman Show, on the other hand, which you got to watch, has this kind of like this weird feeling of social anxiety of being surveilled all the time. And that has a lot to do with the way that we started capturing everything, but also the fact that you have to remember that reality TV really starts in 1987 with Cops, but doesn't really become anything until about 1994 with Real World. And that was when reality TV really became a genre, this idea of non-fiction television, which, as some of you know, I worked on a reality show, and I can tell you it is fiction. It's just designed to make it look like reality. But it also is designed to make it look like every person can be on it, which gives you the sense that everyone at any time is being surveilled. Anyone's there. So Truman Show is the ultimate outcome of a reality show, that all of reality is a construct. If you really look at The Matrix and The Truman Show together and compare them, which you'll have to do a little bit in your response, you have to see that they're almost the same exact movie. They have the same identical construct, or the idea of the realization that there's something more out there. And this is a feeling. I know it's hard for us to understand in their terms, but you'll have to understand this towards the end of the class, how much of an overwhelming feeling that was, that people really felt this inside, that it was happening. And Y2K embodied that. And then nothing happened. Y2K happened, the year 2000 appeared, it was a New Year's celebration, and none of the computers shut down. Nothing changed. And that was what was interesting, is that all this anxiety was built up, but nothing occurred with that. People continued to buy these .com sites. It was part of the .com boom. People were purchasing on these sites that were kind of useless, but they were part of the .com bubble. They were charging exorbitant amounts of prices for these .com sites and not getting any return on those investments. But all that anxiety did actually lead to something that turned out to be unrelated, but embodies all of the realities of the 1990s paranoia, and that's 9/11. When 9/11 occurs, and the buildings dropped, and the Pentagon was hit, and the planes fell, surveillance culture really begins. We are now willingly accepting the fact that we're being surveilled all the time, which we'll talk about with the Greenwald essay, that the NSA is constantly surveilling us, that everything we share, everything we do is quantized and known about us. And it's part of a world where we're constantly under surveillance, whether it be through video, whether it be through our own decision to take selfies or use Snapchat. That's part of our surveillance. And in this small period of time between 9/11 and 2004 or 5, where Facebook and YouTube were born, this little gap of creativity was all that was left of the really interesting part of homemade, non-corporatized digital media. As we see Facebook appear, and now Facebook, the great conglomerate, eating everything around it, and Amazon just buying Whole Foods, and all this massive amounts of digital corporatism of Web 1.0 and 2.0 products that have now become the major systems. Remember, Google was invented in 1999, and now it's one of the biggest companies on earth. But now you can see that these digital things, this part of this digital boom, now becomes our reality. Which brings us in the idea that maybe, as the idea that paranoia that came from the 90s became the actual reality that, it's not required in this class, but in Fight Club, that Tyler Durden feels of this product-oriented reality that tells you how to live your life. And that was something that was a paranoia at the time during the decade. But now we live that in reality. Rather than think about it as paranoia or based on that, we actually embody all of that. But yet, we don't think about it. That's something that you're going to have to critically analyze towards the end for your final paper. So keep this in mind. These are just things that I think are important for you to see and to understand, because it's important for you to understand that the history of digital media isn't something that is just smooth. It isn't a history paper like the history of the world or the history of the United States. It's a history of a cultural imaginary that becomes a corporate reality. And that's a problem or a shame, because we could have, or we had an idea, but technological advances only have so many ways of actually doing it. And there's only certain outcomes that can happen because only those who have the technological access can do things, not those who have not those technological access points. And remember, only 2/7 of the world's population have access to this. But simultaneously, almost 1 billion people use Facebook. So your next assignment is to watch The Social Network, because that'll be our transition to the 2000s. The Social Network kind of gives you a display of how Mark Zuckerberg kind of came up with the idea of making this massive social network that has now purchased the Oculus Rift and will soon purchase pretty much everything you have around you. Now, the last thing I want you to watch is how to explain blockbusters to young people. I think it's a very cute BuzzFeed video, but it's just a neat little way of explaining that at one point, we actually went out of our house to go rent physical objects in order to watch them at home, but we had to return them later. It's just something to keep in mind and remember, because you have to keep putting yourself in this understanding that we did live in a time previous to this, but now we live in a time that's extremely accessible. So it's important for you to remember. Till next time, see you soon.